Hey, what's going on, Adam?
How are you?
Great, how are you?
Doing well, man. I'm doing well.
Hey, it's really great to be in touch. I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very cool. So,
I'm excited for this.
Rad. So it's all about your journey in the music industry and how you guys got to where you are today.
Cool. I hope to ascend this level we're at even more. So
Right on, Philip. So tell me about where'd you grow up?
I grew up right outside of Philadelphia, right outside of Northeast Philadelphia in a suburb called Levittown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys started the band in Massachusetts, right?
Started the band in Massachusetts, yeah. Okay. Actually, and lived in Massachusetts longer than I've lived basically anywhere else. I lived there for 10 years, and I actually came to Massachusetts in a sort of series of strange circumstances, but I was an active duty military officer a number of years ago, and that's what actually brought me to the Boston area.
Oh, wow. The military did, huh?
Yeah, I never actually saw myself as a military type of guy, but I actually really enjoyed it in the military, and I found out some interesting things. Like, it was actually the artist types like myself who were doing really well as officers in the military. We were the people who were sort of garnering the respect from the people who worked with us, and that was really helpful. So I didn't find it like the type of military that you see in movies, like barking orders and people just as they're told. It wasn't that at all for me. So that actually brought me to the Boston area.
Okay. So right out of high school, did you enlist?
No, I went to the right out of high school, I was drafted to a semi-pro hockey team.
Wow.
In the USHL. So I have like a really strange sequence of events. So yeah, I played 2 years of full-time hockey in the USHL and AWHL in Minnesota. Wow. Was traded to Thunder Bay, Ontario. And then my last year was in Helena, Montana. And then I went to the U.S. Air Force Academy, which was sort of my gateway to the military in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And then after that, I served as a military officer deployed to the Persian Gulf, doing conventional Air Force operations, leading the flight line. And then deployed with the Army to Afghanistan, which was a transformational experience. Wow. And then was transferred over to Boston for my last assignment, and the rest is sort of history. After that, I knew I always wanted to get my MBA, so I got out of the military. I went to MIT in Cambridge, and I wrote, actually, for the last EP in 2016 timeframe, I wrote a lot of those songs when I was actually at MIT. So.
Oh, yeah. Is that first EP, the Twist and Bend EP? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so, how'd you get into music originally? You said you played hockey. Did you do both? Actually, I've always, like, from as far back as I can remember, I've always been into music. At first it was violin, then it was clarinet. Like, I always wanted to play the saxophone, but I remember, like, my mom bringing me in elementary school, like, to the faculty who assign your instruments to you. And they said, we're all out of the saxophone. You need to play, I forget. I think that was the clarinet time. And I was like, oh shit, the clarinet. I'm like, can I get something a little cooler? I mean, I guess it's cool, but, and when I was 14, 15, I was totally into Nirvana. That was my, like, in for rock and roll. I mean, I was just like hit in the face by this, and went over my buddy's house. He had an electric guitar. He said, hey, I got something to show you, Phil. Click on that little button on this little teeny amp, which was the distortion button. And I was like, oh my God, like, I
it's not about technical proficiency. And this is what punk rock later told me and taught me. It's less about technical proficiency than it is about attitude and passion and all that sort of intangible stuff. So I was like bitten by the rock and roll bug, and it was like nonstop from 15 on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you just jamming with friends and playing in like high school type bands and stuff?
Yeah, actually I played in a fair amount of bands in high school and even after. None really got any sort of notoriety, but had a great time like playing with a ton of people in high school, and have been writing songs since I was probably 15 years old, which is really sort of my big passion. I mean, I consider myself a musician, but more so than that, I consider myself an artist and a songwriter. And to me, a part of the interest in songwriting is that challenge. It's difficult and it's exciting. It's sort of like a puzzle to me. So, so yeah, ever since I was 15, I've been writing music. And when I was 15, I still, I was thinking about actually sort of, I don't know, doing some sort of competition for some of our friends in the Blackout Balter world to win like my first demo. It was on a cassette tape. And man, I don't know. I don't think those songs were all that well put together, but I just actually found that cassette tape the other day as I was like going through some old stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a relic.
Yeah. Have you found a cassette player to play it yet?
No, that's a great question. That's a great question. Yeah, I don't have one of those. So.
Right. Yeah, that might be the harder thing to do, is finding the cassette player. That's funny though.
Totally.
Wow. See, that demo you said was songs you written when you were 15 years old, or you wrote when you were 15 years old?
Yeah, I think I did. Let's see. I did a project when I was. Well, maybe I was 16, or maybe I was 16 or 17. I remember I saved up enough money working summers to go into the studio. And then a couple years later, I saved up enough money to go back into the studio. So I have that project kicking around somewhere. Then I did a shitload of home recordings, and I've always been into that. Even like the demos we give to our producers we're working with and stuff, like they're all just sort of cut by me at home, and with varying levels of quality. Like oftentimes the producers are like, yeah, I can see where you're going, but this is shit.
You're like, that's where you come in.
Yeah, that's where you come in. No, I was thinking about giving our, our friends and fans of the band access to that sort of material too. I think it'd be fun to sort of expose our like early stages of creativity. It'd be
sure fun. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I like when bands do that. Like, Green Day will bring out some some demoed song from, 91 or something. You'll hear it.
Totally.
I think it's cool, like when bands will pull out their earlier stuff.
Yeah, totally. It would be a little scary, but I think I could come around to doing that.
Yeah. When was the first time you performed your own material in front of people? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was in high school for sure. I did a number of performances in high school. There was sort of a band thing that sticks out in my mind as probably the first performance. Wow, that's a really great question. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I remember that I think we're a 4-piece band with, 3 of my other really close friends. And it was like, I don't know, it was like a high school talent show, and we were the closers. I remember we were the closers. I don't know how we became the closers, but we became the closers. And I had this like old quad reverb, which I still have, 1970s Fender quad reverb amp. And I remember I had it cranked. And I remember before we got on stage, I saw one of like the faculty members come over and turn the amp way down. And so I remember the first thing I did when I went on stage is I turned it right back up. I'll never forget that. So yeah, I mean, it was really cool. There were a lot of people there. I forget if we did any originals. I think we were just doing covers at that time. Maybe we did one original, but yeah, I remember that very well. And then sort of the big first, sort of, I'd say like enlightened performance moment when I was really getting serious was, I'd have to think about the time frame. I think it was like when was that? Maybe 2011, I think. And I was in Dayton, Ohio, of all places. And actually I'm like I'm an unreasonable fan of Dayton, Ohio. I love Dayton.
That's funny. Real quick. My parents lived in Dayton, and they moved from Dayton to San Diego. My mom was 8 months pregnant with me. So I could have been raised in Dayton, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. And I found out like a lot of people talk about how cool Ohio is. And I remember when I was heading to Ohio, I'm like, I really don't know what to expect, but I'm guessing it'll be sort of bland, vanilla, not much going on. But to my surprise, I got really involved in the whole rock scene that was going on at the time, which was really beautiful. It was in the Oregon district, in downtown Dayton. And it was vibrant. Like everyone was very collaborative. I got to know a ton of musicians on the scene. They pulled me into their circles, and I couldn't even believe it. Actually, I was really tentative to play out prior to that, but these musicians just sucked me in. And to this day, I feel really indebted and thankful for that. And I remember when I was, I think I was like getting ready to go into business school or something in Cambridge. And there was like a survey that we all had to take. And it's like, all the classmates would get to know one another. And one of the questions was, what is your favorite place in the world? And I'll never forget to this day that I put Canal Street Tavern, Dayton, Ohio. Everyone's probably like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like, Canal Street Tavern? But Canal Street Tavern, unfortunately, it shut down. But it was like this mecca of vibrant music. It was the epitome of downtown Dayton, Ohio's music scene. And it was just a really amazing time in my life. And I played out so much I was in Dayton, Ohio for 6 months, I think. And I mean, I played out a ton. And that's really where I found my love of performance and sort of made a commitment to myself to sort of attain the next level of seriousness with regard to forming a band and playing out and all that kind of stuff.
So when you were in Dayton, Ohio, where were you like in your career? Were you out of the military at that point, or what?
No, I was actually still in it. Yeah.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was like sent on this special assignment for 6 months to Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
To build this weird sensor system for Afghanistan, which I had just gotten back from a few months prior.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, every chance I got, we worked really hard in it's called the Air Force Research Lab, which is in Dayton, Ohio, as some people know. Worked really hard during the day, and like every night I was like downtown Dayton on the rock scene. It was like,
that's cool.
And like no one no one knew my military affiliation on the rock scene. They just knew me as like another rock and roll guy, another musician.
Sure.
And all the guys on the military base, no one knew I was the musician. And I was really happy to sort of like have my feet in both of those worlds. So
sure. That's really cool that you got a chance to perform while you're still in the military. That's really rad.
Oh, totally. I don't know if I have any videos out there. I definitely have some pictures for sure. Maybe I'll have to push some of those out at some point too.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. So from Dayton, Ohio, you're out playing and performing and stuff. From Dayton, is that when you ended up in Cambridge?
So I moved to Cambridge so I was actually 6 months away from the Boston area when I went to Dayton. I had just recently moved to the Boston area, and then I was called to do this short-term assignment in Dayton, Ohio. And then so upon that assignment being over, 6 months later, I went back to Boston, and I basically did like my final commitment, which was, I don't know, another year and a half or so. And I always knew I wanted to go to business school. So I transitioned to business school right after the military career.
Okay.
And it was, so actually in there, these are really good questions. I did a solo project, actually, I think in 2011, like people can dig that up online somewhere, which I'm actually still pretty proud of the songs. The production is total shit, but I think the ideas behind the music are really good. And I actually sort of aspire at some point to redo that album. But I did a solo project in I think it was 2011. Mm-hmm. or 2013 or something. I don't know, around that time. And so I was playing out when I got back to Boston. For sure, I was a part of the Boston rock and roll scene doing solo stuff. And while I was at MIT for grad school, I did a lot of playing out too, not associated with the school, but playing around Boston. Like I don't know, we played at Middle East, like there are some really awesome rock clubs, some of which are no longer there, but Middle East, and TT the Bears was there. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. At least it went away. Maybe it's resurrected, who knows? But and there were a few, like Church went away. There's this rock club called Church. It was super cool. So I did a lot of playing around there. So I had sort of a solo project going on, mm-hmm. and sort of getting my songwriting chops, in tune, and getting the performance stuff worked out and all that kind of stuff. And then 2016-ish, 2015, 2016-ish is where I got this really strange sort of once in a lifetime opportunity, where right there in San Diego, I met up with Dave Keuning of the Killers. He had me over, and like, it was just, it was amazing how that whole thing came about. And actually, our former publicist didn't want me to talk about this too much, but I'm happy to sort of expose this now because we're years away from that moment.
Okay.
But like, when all of that crazy stuff was happening, and I was like, oh my God, like listening to Dave's demos that he was working on for the Killers, and then Dave's listening to my stuff. I thought he wouldn't give a shit at all about my stuff, and he actually really loved it and is like, you got to come out here to Vegas, and I'm going to be on the album with you and all that. Actually, when that moment happened right there in your San Diego, I actually went back to Boston, and I was like, oh shit, I need to create a band to like go out and record this shit. Like, this is going to happen. It's like, I didn't really have a band. It was just sort of solo stuff that I'd I had thrown together. And so I ran back to Boston. This is like really the bring it backwards, bringing it behind the scenes right here. So, but ran back to Boston and, you know, was calling all the old friends up, the people who had worked on the solo project. I wanted to sort of get a new bass player on the project and bring in a keys player and all that kind of stuff. And so cobbled together the band. And then, you know, before we knew it, we were flying out to Vegas and doing this. So it was sort of a strange way to create a band, but
wow,
really awesome. So really awesome opportunity.
So Dave Keuning approached you when you were still a solo artist. So when you started Blackout Balter,
he didn't really know that. Yeah.
Right. But but that was the case. So you come back and then go back to him with these new players and say, hey, here's my band that I've had for, you know, X amount of time.
Yeah. For like 1 week. Yeah.
Right.
For 1 week. Yeah. Yeah. Well, essentially, yes. It wasn't, it didn't feel like that though.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, how did you meet him originally?
How did that
ball get rolling?
Yeah, I weaseled my way into a Killers after party. So I don't even know. I weaseled my way into this Killers after party, and I forget exactly how that happened, but I talked to a couple of the guys there. I think I met Mark, who I became reasonably close with, who plays bass for the Killers. I met Ronnie, I think, who I became really close with. I met Dave, who I became close with. I don't think I met Brandon that night.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Dave and I hit it off. And I remember I exchanged numbers with Dave. I forget even how that happened. We exchanged numbers though. And I just said, hey, listen, if I'm ever in San Diego, I'll hit you up. And he said, yeah, great. And it was total long shot. Like that was like me really throwing myself out there. It's like, yeah, right. Like Dave's going to really like return my text. Probably not. But sure as shit, I was, no joke, a few months later, I was in San Diego I was in LA for business.
Uh-huh.
In LA for business. And I was like, hey, maybe I'll just do what I said I was going to do. I'll tell Dave I'm on the West Coast. And I shot Dave a text and he responded. And I was like, I'm in LA. I can easily shoot down to San Diego and, you know, we can grab dinner or something. He's like, let's do it. I'm like, shit, this is great. So,
wow.
Yeah. So he's just such a great guy, so humble, and artistically just phenomenal. So I can't say enough great things about him. But yeah, so long story short, I shot down to San Diego. We had dinner, and then after, he invited me over, and we listened to those demos together. And it was just such a, even to this day, after having done the whole recording process in Vegas at their studio Battleborn, and it still, when I think about that whole moment, it was really amazing. I'll cherish that group of memories forever, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow. So did he know that you were an artist and that you had songs and you wanted him to hear them when you texted him? Like, was that kind of part of it?
Actually, believe it or not, I didn't have it on my agenda to show him any of the music. And I just so happened to be in the studio doing my, like, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, every year or so I'd pay for studio time. I would go into the studio and I'd like semi-professionally record the music I'd been working on. And it just so happened that maybe a few months prior to my going down to San Diego, I had cut some demos. And I I really had no intention of showing Dave the demos. I didn't even know he'd invite me to his house. So
sure, you
I
just
thought
you just thought you were gonna hang out with him, right?
I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan, right? I mean,
Right.
so, and I'm like, this is so great. So there we are eating dinner, and then invites me over to his house to listen to music and all that kind of stuff. And so he said, hey, I would love for you to hear some demos I've been working on. And he connected his phone and put them on the stereo system and, in the music room. And I was like, wow, this is so great. And I remember he was sitting behind his drum kit, just sort of playing along. And I think I had one of his guitars in my hand or something. I don't know. Just all of this is very surreal to me. And, and then after, I don't know, we listened to a few demos, and like, once again, totally throwing myself out there, like so ridiculous when I think back at it. But after he played the demos, I'm like, I've got some demos too. Like, honestly, no intention of showing them all that. It just sort of like came out. And I thought he'd be like, yeah, whatever. Or best case scenario, he'd be like, yeah, show me the demos. And he'd be like, yeah, pretty good. But actually, I connected my phone to the stereo, started playing the songs, and right away he was like, wow, this, like, I totally didn't expect this. That's basically how he couched it, and like, this is really good. And I remember him saying, like, I could see you adding a guitar part here. I could see you doing this here. I could see you doing that there. And to me, that would have been enough.
Right.
I'm like, this is so great. I mean, my brain is exploding already. And essentially, I mean, long story short, he ultimately, and he said, hey, why don't you come out to Vegas to our studio? Happy to help you with the project you're doing. And I would love to, I'd love to play on the EP with you. I'd love to play at least, a couple songs or something. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I totally didn't expect that. So that night, I get in my car after saying goodbye, and, I'm like the little kid who's like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. I can't believe this. And then back to Boston, and now that story where I'm like cobbling this band together, like, oh
sure,
shit, this is happening. Let's get out to Vegas. So yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And then a lot of stories about Vegas too, but just amazing. Really cool. Really appreciative.
Yeah. So he helped you, or he worked with you guys on the Twist and Bend album.
That's right.
And what'd you guys do after putting that together? Is that when it officially you started Blackout Balter, and then
did
you tour, or what were you guys up to?
Yeah,
I guess
it was sort of, the early life of an indie artist is not always pretty. I mean, the life of a famous artist, which we are not, but the life of a famous artist is not always pretty. I mean, even if you look at the Killers today, it's like, it's just Brandon and Ronnie from the original crew who are touring. Mm-hmm. And so for us as an indie artist, yeah, I mean, we worked hard. We sort of cobbled together a team. Right now, I wish our external team outside of the band for the Twist and Bend EP release would have been just a little, some pieces were really good. Our publicist was really great, for example, but I wish some of the other members of the external team were just a little more incentivized to push. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we did some shows. We didn't do any big touring or anything like that. We didn't really have a budget for that at the time. So it was really, even after that big sort of bang of having Dave Keuning involved in this project, like a really humble start to everything. So, and to this day, I'm still very humbled by that whole experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're still working hard to sort of, you know, write the best music we can write and garner some notoriety so that we can positively affect the lives of other people. You know, I think that's a part of what it's all about. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, you guys have a new record coming out on July 24th.
That's
And
right.
is that the first release is that the next release since the 2016 EP?
That's right. It
Wow,
is.
so you guys hadn't put anything out in a few years.
No, I mean, I wish we would have. But it's been a long time coming, and I have a lot of stuff that's sort of gone on between those two goalposts. I started a company in China. I spent a lot of time in China over the past 4 years, and so there was a lot of focus on that. That also, those experiences to me as a songwriter are really great too, though, and I think that's what a lot of musicians, as they sort of garner some bit of fame, they sort of forget that the way you make good music, in my opinion, is you have to live rich and deep experiences. And if you don't, your music's going to be pretty shallow and hollow. So to me, all of that stuff is just great experience that I can like push into my songwriting. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so this is the first release post Twist and Bend, and I really think it's a great collection of songs. I think people are going to really like it.
How did you, like, I'm sure you have a bunch of songs written within those 4 years. How are you able to decide on which tracks would make this record?
That's a good question. I don't know. I get feedback from teammates and from family and friends, and I sort of obsess over that type of stuff. So it's a process I think long and hard about. And even when we get into the studio phase, when we go into the studio, there were a couple tracks. There was at least one track, maybe two, that post are doing the rough, the rough initial pass in the studio. We cut them. So I think you write these songs, you have a relationship with these songs, you get some feedback, you have your gut instinct on the songs, then you get
Mm-hmm.
feedback. Everything sort of comes together, then you go into the studio and you're always looking at weeding things out. I think that's important. But actually, we ended up with 14 songs on this album. That's a big album. And even though we weeded some stuff out, and then there was, so Red Letters was a single we dropped about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that song.
Yeah, very cool. And then we're getting ready to release another this week, which I'm sure by the time this is out, it'll be out. But that song, Wild One, which is the song that we're going to release this coming Friday,
Mm-hmm.
was actually, it was a last minute song. All the other songs on the album, 13, had already been recorded fully and were being mixed and all that. And I remember coming into the studio after I'd sort of solidified the Wild One concept in my brain, which came pretty quickly actually. And usually the songwriting process for me is a challenge. I mean, it takes months and months for me to be comfortable with a song, actually. So it's really sort of a labor of love that I spend a lot of time with each of these songs. But Wild One came really quickly, and I went into the studio the next day and talked to Jeremy, our producer, and I said, hey, do you mind if if we just throw down a quick demo? And he said, yeah, no problem. Just go for it. So got in there, banged out a quick demo, and Jeremy did a little rough mixing that afternoon. And by that evening, I was driving home listening to Wild One, which just sort of fell out of my brain onto the page, so to speak. And I was like, wow, this sounds raw. It sounds like a demo. And that was one of the reasons I liked it. At the time, I was thinking about maybe just pushing it off for a future project, for maybe the next Blackout Balter album. But to me, it sounded different and interesting and unique for a number of reasons. And so it ended up making the album and being our second single. So yeah, so I don't know. It's been a strange, interesting, exciting process.
Yeah.
So
that sounds like I don't know if you've heard this story before, but Billy Corgan with Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. The story is that the record was being mixed and going to go to press, and he wrote the night before. He wrote 1979, and he like had to call everybody. Was like, "I've got this song. You need to hear it. I think it should be on the record." And then they recorded it overnight, and it ended up being on the album. And
I didn't
now
know
it's like
that.
a massive, one of the biggest songs ever released. So maybe that's your wild one.
Hey, maybe. I hope so. I hope so. I really hope people feel the way I feel about that song. To me, that is probably my favorite song on the album. And that sort of rough demo quality is still there, I think. And it's got a whole lot of passion and attitude as well. So yeah, I hope people enjoy it because I really like it. Yeah.
The song that's already out is called Red Letter. Tell me a little bit about that song. Why did you choose that as the lead single?
Yeah, sort of a little bit of an interesting story behind that too. So we did, it's not so hard to find this stuff online, but we did a Paste Magazine in-studio session back in 2016. And I remember at that point, as an artist, you get a little bored with playing the same songs. And I was like, screw it. I've got this new song. It's called Red Letter. Like, let's play it as a band. And so we did. And yeah, I mean, I think at the time our very modest fan base, but amazing fan base really, really liked the song. And I knew we could even, of course, make it a lot better through, a formal in-studio session and production and all that kind of stuff. So I always enjoyed that song. I appreciated that song, and I knew that would be sort of single quality. And yeah, the song itself is about sort of some of the things we were touching on, where it's like you get to a point of fame, and let's be honest, we're not famous yet. So you get to a certain point of fame, and that becomes your failing. And it's sort of a comment on my view of life, which is, as I was saying, like, as an artist, as a songwriter, any type of artist, you shouldn't necessarily just look at working hard at your medium, your artistic medium. You should be working hard to garner new, valuable experiences. And we look at like all these one-hit wonders out there in music history, and you wonder how they just like die off. Like they do one song and then just die off. And I am absolutely committed to creating a ton of well thought out music, at the very least, that is informed by deep experiences that I've lived. And I won't just continue pushing on the songwriting front. I absolutely want to continue living life and being inspired by the experiences that I'm living and pushing that in the music. I think that's the key. So Red Letter to me is sort of the scenario. It sort of discusses that sort of theme in an abstract way. And yeah, to me, it's an important song. And I really like the melodic components in it too. So, which is very important to me as a songwriter.
Was it difficult to choose the song because it had been, 4 years since you had put out new music, was it difficult? Like, okay, I want to do this song. We're going to come out this way. Or was that did you take any of that into consideration when choosing it?
Yeah, I think a little bit. And once again, like, even though we still to this day, I think part of our appeal to fans who are finding us now is that we're still actually sort of undiscovered. And I don't mind that. And so back in 2016 when we did this, and this was a question in 2020 when we were talking about the release of, a single and what single is it going to be, we know that our early core group of fans who we know and love, and, they know most of everything about us, we knew that, of course, they knew about that Red Letter session we did in the Paste magazine studio. Mm-hmm. And so one of the discussions was, hey, we don't really want to let them down. It's been 4 frickin' years since we've released music, and the first thing they're going to hear off of the new album is going to be a song they heard back in 2016. But I love back to sort of the attitude and the passion and the feeling that song embodies who Blackout Balter is. And I said this in one quotation for a media outlet, like, I really wanted to make Red Letter sort of a punch to the listener's face. When they hear it right out of the gates, I want people to be sort of blown back. And I remember we just the other night, I think it was last night, we heard it on Lightning 100 here in Nashville.
Oh, cool.
And after the song, yeah, it was really cool. And after the song played, the DJ said, I hope everyone's awake now. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Like, right out of the gates, we're sort of punching you in the face and saying, this is who we are. And Red Letter, I think, does that extremely well. So in the end, we chose that as our first single.
That's awesome. Is it cool hearing your song on the radio when you're driving around and stuff?
Yeah, I think it's really, I think that would never get old. I think there are probably bands that play it really cool and say, yeah, it's just, just another day. But to us, I mean, I forget that movie, what it's called, like That Thing You Do or something, that 50s band.
Yeah.
Like, they hear the song on the radio and they're freaking out. I mean, honestly, that's still us. Like, we're just, we're kids at heart having a great time. And we get super, super excited when we hear our stuff on the radio, or when someone new finds us and engages with us on social media. We're doing sort of this not a competition. We're doing this social thing. We're calling it #BalterDance, and people are sending us dances.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, the TikTok dance.
It's so cool. And we're getting these really awesome submissions, and the band and I are loving it. Like, we're not playing it cool. We're not like, oh, just another random person dancing to our song. No, we're like eating this up. We love it. And that's what I want to express too. Like, we couldn't appreciate our fans and the friends of the band more. We absolutely love it. So like, and the band, this is one more thing. You got me all hyped up about this. So, one other thing is, actually, maybe I shouldn't say this, but the band itself still manages our social accounts. So it's not our management. I didn't want that. So we actually get new fans who are engaging with us, and the band and I will take turns managing the social account. But we actually proactively, if someone's commenting on our post or something, we'll oftentimes hit them up with a private message, and we're like, hey, thanks so much for checking us out, and by the way, this is the real band. We just want you to know it's not management. Like, this is us. And if you ever need anything from us or have any questions or ideas or whatever, like, let us know. We're approachable. So I love that. And I know I speak for the whole band when I say we all get a kick out of that. So anyway.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, we're just excited people.
Yeah. On the social media topic, are you guys doing anything on like Instagram Live, doing any of those live sessions during quarantine?
Yeah, good question. We haven't up to this point. My excuse for that is that the music hadn't been released yet, but we actually have a couple of those on the rough calendar in the near term. We're doing, I think, at least 2 live stream sessions, and we're going to do a live video too in our rehearsal space, which will, have a little production quality to it. So I'm really excited about those. We haven't yet done the live stream, but yeah, we're going to be on that train here soon. So more to come.
Very cool. Very cool. So the record's out on July 24th. Animal, can't wait to hear it in full. And then the new single comes out on Friday. So that's really exciting stuff.
That's right, Adam. Yep.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Philip. I have one more question for you.
Yes.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, I think you should. It sounds really cliche, but when I got back from Afghanistan, I sort of made a promise to myself that I had seen how short life was, and I would work hard to do what I wanted to do in this life. And for aspiring artists, I really think a big part of getting moving in the right direction is throwing yourself out there. And a lot of people say you have to be careful about throwing yourself out there too early. And I disagree. You should really work hard to do what you want to do. And you should, work hard at your craft, but you should also engage in really deep and meaningful experiences, which will bolster your music, and then push hard to get it out there and believe in what you're doing. And I think that's really important to what overall the band Blackout Balter stands for. It's like, we want you to understand that life is short. You should be excited about what you're doing. You should be passionate about it, and you should push to do the things you really care about. And I really, really hope that sort of thought comes through in the music when people listen to it. So that's my advice to aspiring artists.